Hello and welcome back to Project 380. In this video I'm going to be changing the tie rod and track rod end on the Mark 1. So you've lowered your Mx5 or done some suspension work and your alignment's out, and your steering components look as rusty as mine, or you've got a nasty knock from your steering, you're probably going to have to change your tie rod and your track rod end. So to get things started, we're going to get the car up in the air, the front wheels off and the under tray off. Then before we start removing any components, I'm going to undo this lock nut here. This is going to help us in a minute. By now, if yours looks like mine, you're probably going to need a little bit of heat to undo that lock nut. I've only undone that a little bit, but that's good enough for now. You'll see why in a little bit. Now to remove the track rod end. It should look something like this, with a castle nut and a split pin. But most of the time they'll rust away, and you won't be able to remove that split pin properly. So the easiest thing to do is grab a pair of side cutters and try and either cut it out or pull it out, or use a punch and hammer to knock it all the way through. Once that split pin's out, we need to remove the castle nut. And mine's pretty rusty, so I'm going to hammer a socket on and undo it. The easiest way to remove the track rod end out of the hub, if your hub is rusty like mine, is hit the hub right here with a hammer, and it should just fall out. Once it's out of the hub, you can simply unscrew it by hand. That's ready for the bin. To make the alignment closer when we put our new equipment on, we're going to take a set of verniers or a ruler and measure from the end of the tie rod to the lock nut. Remember that measurement, and then when we fit our new equipment, we can wind this lock nut in to our set measurements, and the alignment will be pretty close. Not perfect, but close enough. Now we need to fully remove this nut. To remove the tie rod, we need the steering boot off, and that's held on with two clips. One smaller outer clip, which is pretty easy, with a pair of needle nose pliers. Squeeze that together and wiggle it off. And the inner one is why we need the under tray off. It's a little twist tie there. You simply twist it the other way and it should come off, but it will probably break. This is probably going to be tight, but to remove it, you just pull it off the steering rack and wiggle it off the tie rod. This will reveal the ball joint of the tie rod. And where the tie rod joins onto the rack, there's this little lock collar. It's got 4 tabs on it, which are bent over onto the tie rod. We just need to hit them flat with a screwdriver to allow us to remove the tie rod. Once you've hit that lock collar out the way, you should be able to see that tie rod has got some flats on it, which you could put a big spanner on and then undo it from the rack. Or you can use a specific tie rod tool. Take that lock collar off the old tie rod and put it on the new one. Now it's a very good idea to put a bit of blue Loctite on those threads and wind it back into the rack, making sure those 2 little tabs on that lock collar line up with the 2 cutaways in the rack. Tighten that back in the rack the same way you took it out, and then hit that lock collar to lock the tie rod in place. With the tie rod all installed, the steering boot could go back on, and then push it onto the rack and secure it down. The metal tie that I took off is about to give up, so I'm just going to secure that down with a high quality tie wrap, and then the smaller clip can go on. It's at this point I would suggest putting some high quality grease on these threads here. Don't be shy with it. Hopefully this will help the nut and the tie rod from season for a long time. And then you could put the nut on. It's going to get pretty messy, but we really don't want that to seize. Screw that on to the measurement we took earlier and wind the track rod end on up till the lock nut. Now we know our track end is going to be fairly close. Now we can put the track rod end into the hub. Don't put any grease on this, as it's got a tapered shaft, and if there's grease on it, when you do up this castle nut, this ball joint is just going to spin. Now you can put the castle nut on and then tighten the castle nut down. You want to tighten it down so the cutouts in the castle nut line up with the hole in the track rod end, and put the split pin in. And pull the split pin round to lock it off. Gently nip that lock nut down just so you can drive safe to your alignment. And there you have it, a nice new tie rod and track rod end all installed. All we got to do now is put that under tray back on, put the wheel on, torque the wheels up, let it down to the floor, and you can go get yourself an alignment. But right now, I've got the other side to do. If this video helped you install your tie rod and track rod end, let me know in the comments down below. As per usual, like, share, comment and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. And of course it's a different size.